moment when a simple misunderstanding over a missile silo or a border skirmish could trigger a global nuclear catastrophe. What the agency required was not a new piece of technology, but sustained, unobserved access to the private conversations of Soviet decision-makers during the rare moments when their professional defenses dropped and honesty replaced the rigid, guarded language of official bureaucracy. The solution to this intelligence vacuum came from an insight that seemed almost too simple to be true. A former Soviet intelligence officer, who had defected to the West years earlier, revealed during long debriefings that senior Kremlin officials and military commanders spoke most freely when they were inside their own private homes and dachas. These domestic spaces were assumed to be secure by default, protected not by electronic sweeps or armed guards, but by the psychological shield of trust and the assumption that the little people, the domestic staff who cooked their meals and maintained their grounds, were invisible. This massive blind spot in the Soviet operational mindset became the foundation for one of the most patient and successful operations in the history of the Cold War. The man chosen for this mission was selected precisely because there was nothing remarkable about him. He was not charismatic, he harbored no ambitions for heroics, and he possessed a rare psychological constitution that allowed him to exist in a room without drawing any attention to himself. He spoke Russian with the fluency of a man born in the heart of Moscow, and his handlers believed he could endure years of isolation without the need for contact, reassurance, or any form of recognition from the country he served. His preparation for the mission was an exhaustive process that consumed nearly 2 years of his life inside secure facilities where time seemed to have stopped. He did not merely study the Russian language, he immersed himself deeply in Soviet labor practices, domestic routines, and agricultural techniques until they became a second nature, almost a biological instinct. He learned how to complain as Soviet workers complained in the long bread lines, he mastered the physical posture of a man exhausted by the system, and he learned to speak about politics and material shortages with the exact degree of cynicism expected from someone who had lived under the regime their entire life. He memorized complex bureaucratic procedures, internalized the ideological language of party meetings, and trained himself to react instinctively to sounds, orders, and everyday situations as if he had been born and raised in the outskirts of Moscow. When he finally crossed the border into the Soviet Union, he did so almost imperceptibly, passing through a secondary checkpoint with documents identifying him as a simple worker seeking better opportunities in the capital. His fabricated background was deliberately mediocre and uninteresting, with no records of military service, no advanced education, and no ties that could invite a more detailed scrutiny from the state authorities. In the first few months, he took low-paying manual jobs, lived in overcrowded apartments, and attended mandatory meetings, absorbing the rhythms and tensions of Russian life until he became, in every visible sense, a common and insignificant piece in the vast Soviet machinery. The golden opportunity arose through informal domestic labor networks, a world of verbal recommendations that escaped the official radar of state security. The gardener of a senior KGB official had fallen seriously ill, and the estate required constant and specialized maintenance to uphold the prestige of the Russian elite. The American operative's name surfaced through intermediaries who knew him only as a diligent and silent worker, and when he was finally interviewed, his genuine technical expertise did the rest of the work. He spoke with confidence and authority about soil composition, winter pruning techniques, and specific plant diseases that other candidates completely ignored, demonstrating an attention to detail that impressed the household staff. The vetting process focused almost entirely on ideological reliability and the authenticity of his documents, but never on imagination, as the possibility of an American intelligence agent possessing the patience and manual skill to work as a gardener for years simply did not fit the Soviet operational model. To the KGB officers, a spy was someone who wore expensive suits and attended diplomatic parties, not someone who spent the day on their knees in the dirt caring for rosebushes under the sun or snow. Once hired, he moved into a small and Spartan cottage on the edge of the estate, which granted him a certain level of privacy but also isolated him almost absolutely from the outside world. During the first months, he did nothing that could be interpreted as intelligence gathering, dedicating himself exclusively to restoring the neglected gardens with a care that bordered on obsession. He knew that if the garden failed, his cover would fail, and therefore excellence in manual labor was not just a task, but his primary line of defense and survival. As the garden flourished under his care, the trust of the house's residents grew proportionally, and daily routines began to settle. The official left every morning and returned late, often bringing colleagues for informal dinners or private meetings where alcohol and fatigue lowered their guard. On warm nights, windows and doors remained open, and confidential conversations began to float freely out to the garden, where the man on his knees among the plants listened to everything. Initially, the information was basic, involving names, schedules, and moods, but as time passed, it became something much more valuable, revealing he was surrounded by enemies who treated him with a polite, aristocratic indifference, never realizing that the man they viewed as a mere part of the landscape was the single most dangerous person in their lives. As the calendar turned into the early 1970s, the atmosphere of the Cold War shifted from overt confrontation to a more deceptive period of détente, but for the operative in the garden, the danger only intensified. He understood a truth that few in Washington could fully grasp, that beneath the public smiles of diplomats and the signing of treaties, the Soviet machine was working harder than ever to gain a decisive advantage. The heroism of his mission did not lie in a single moment of glory, but in the grueling, thousand-day marathon of maintaining a perfect lie while his own identity slowly eroded. He was a man living in a psychological purgatory, serving the very regime that sought to destroy his homeland, all while carrying secrets that could prevent a global holocaust. Every morning, as he stepped out into the biting Moscow chill to clear snow or prep the soil, he was acutely aware that he was the only American for thousands of miles who truly knew what was happening. At night, in the suffocating silence of his small cottage, he would engage in a desperate ritual to remain sane, mentally reciting the names of American streets, the taste of a specific diner's coffee, or the lyrics to songs he hadn't heard in years. He was fighting a war on two fronts, one against the KGB's counterintelligence and another against the encroaching darkness of his own isolation. This was the invisible frontline of the Cold War, where the most important battles weren't fought with tanks in the Fulda Gap, but in the mind of a single patriot who refused to break, even when the world forgot he existed. By 1975, the official he served had ascended to the inner circle of the Soviet security apparatus, making the estate a frequent meeting place for the most powerful men in the Eastern Bloc. The gardener was now witnessing history in its rawest, most dangerous form. He overheard the architects of the Soviet Union discussing the vulnerabilities of their own systems and their secret plans to outpace the West in the arms race. He saw their faces, marked not by the confidence shown in May Day parades, but by the stress and fear of men who knew their empire was brittle. To these men, the gardener was just a shadow against the greenery, a tool as mindless as the shovel he leaned upon. They spoke of the United States as a distant, abstract enemy, never realizing that the very embodiment of the American spirit, resilient, observant, and unyielding, was standing just outside their window, capturing every word. His presence was a testament to the fact that while the Soviet Union relied on the fear of its own people, the American operative relied on his conviction that freedom was worth the price of his own soul. He was the ghost in the machine, the silent witness to the decline of an empire, and the most effective weapon the United States had in its arsenal, forged in the dirt and silence of a Moscow garden. The life of a deep-cover operative is a constant tightrope walk, and for the gardener, the illusion of safety could be shattered by the slightest misstep, an unexpected change in routine, or a sudden flicker of suspicion from the ever-present Soviet security apparatus. After years of uneventful vigilance, a chilling shift occurred in the meticulously ordered world of the estate. A mid-level KGB investigator, known for his relentless thoroughness, was assigned to conduct a routine security audit of all personnel connected to high-ranking officials. This was not a direct threat to the gardener, it was merely the grinding, impersonal machinery of the Soviet state flexing its muscles, but for an operative living a fabricated life, any audit was a potential death sentence. The investigator's presence was like a subtle chill in the air, a disruption to the familiar rhythm, and the official's casual confidence seemed to waver slightly as he observed the new man scrutinizing every face on the property. For weeks, the gardener felt an unseen gaze on his back, a constant, low-frequency hum of impending exposure that threatened to unravel 14 years of agonizing effort. Every interaction became a test. The investigator would make seemingly innocuous remarks, attempting to gauge reactions, to spot any deviation from the expected pattern of a simple Soviet worker. He might ask a question about local politics, knowing full well that a gardener's opinion should be predictably aligned with party doctrine, or he might comment televised summits and the ceremonial signing of SALT treaties, the gardener was providing the grim reality behind the theater. He heard the senior officials laughing about how they would circumvent the very agreements they had just signed, and he captured the genuine panic in their voices when American technological breakthroughs were mentioned. He was the human sensor that allowed the United States to stay one step ahead in a global game of chess where the prize was the survival of Western civilization. The psychological landscape of his life had become a desolate territory where the line between his true self and his assumed persona was nearly erased. He had lived as a Soviet laborer for so long that he sometimes caught himself thinking in Russian, or feeling a strange, hollow sympathy for the very men he was spying on, not because he agreed with their ideology, but because he saw their human frailties. He witnessed their illnesses, their family disputes, and their private griefs, all while remaining a ghost at the edge of their lives. This was the ultimate sacrifice, to give up one's own identity so completely that the truth became a foreign language. He lived in a world where a single moment of genuine human connection could